It was the summer of 2001. I had just gotten out of school and I was going to the beach frequently. I was living with my mother because my dad was leading some expedition in Canada. He was looking for the beast, whatever that meant. All the company that I had was my mother and my friends. As I said earlier, I would spend most of my time at the beach with my friends, most of the time stopping for drinks at one of the cafes between home and the beach. Every so often on hot days, we would get ice cream and it was amazing. Anyways, I digress because I'm getting off track. During the day, nothing particularly interesting had occurred. It was just a typical day in Florida for me. It's what happened during the night that sends shivers down my spine to this day. I was making an attempt to sneak into the house without my mom's notice. My plan to do this was to go to the back of the house and sneak over the fence that me and my friends painted the week prior. There's a tree stump near the back left corner outside of the fence. I used it to get some altitude whilst hopping the fence because I didn't want to damage it. Once I made it over the fence, I released a sigh of relief, but I didn't relax yet because I knew my journey still wasn't complete. I carefully rose from the moist grass and prowled my way to the back door, which we kept unlocked at the time. Looking back on it, keeping the back door unlocked was a foolish decision that I still haven't repeated. I slowly opened the door, trying to avoid the door letting out a squeak. After what seemed like minutes, I made my way into the house, and my room wasn't far. I tiptoed through the house, stepping on areas of the floor that were soft to avoid my feet sticking to the surface. I snuck past the bathroom's door and into my room. When I closed my door, I felt like I just made the biggest accomplishment of my life up until that point. I don't know why, but the simple act of getting inside my own home was an accomplishment to me. I carefully walked to my bed and plopped down. I was asleep within seconds. I woke up in the dead of the night. I looked at my alarm clock with tired eyes, and it read 3:13 a.m. I wasn't ready to get up for the day, so I decided to go back to sleep to awake at a normal time. The only issue was that there was one obstacle between me and my slumber: my bladder. I conjured the energy to rise from the sheets of my memory foam throne and proceeded to the bathroom. I walked slowly towards the door of my room. Trying to avoid stepping on slices of cheese, I carefully scrutinized each possible destination for my foot to land. I was only one step away from the door when I heard something. I didn't know for sure what it was, but I know it came from my mom's room, and it sounded like someone getting out of a bed. I froze. I stayed there as still as humanly possible, listening to any more sounds that may be connected. There was nothing but silence. I must have stayed there, still, for 5 minutes. I could hear the clock in the living room as if it were right in front of me. The quietest things can seem incredibly loud when there's nothing going on, you know. Dismissing the sound that I heard in the other room, I made my final step to the door. After nearly 10 minutes, I got to see the interior of the hallway. My first sight being the late Korbin Blaze III. He nodded and said, "Ohayo gozaimasu." I nodded, confused why he was speaking Japanese all of a sudden, and hurried to the bathroom. The hallway was very dark, but it was very vibrant at the same time. We had lamps all over the house that had blue light bulbs in them. We thought they gave off a very pleasant aesthetic. I digress. I made it to the bathroom and didn't even bother to be quiet about it because my bladder was on the verge of leaking. And that wouldn't have been good, to say the least. I made it to the toilet, my feet on top of the soft rug, eyes closed, enjoying every moment of it. Somehow, though, I didn't notice how cold the bathroom was. Looking back on it, it must have been below freezing in there because I could see my breath and the toilet water was frozen solid. Once my urination ecstasy wore off, I noticed the frozen toilet water and was astonished. I reacted with a combination of both amazement and fear. Once again, I froze in place. I didn't stop moving because of the unusual properties of the room. No. but because of what I just heard on the other side of the house, near the kitchen. It was a slice of cheese hitting the kitchen floor. Still frozen, I quietly and slowly turned to face the bathroom door. As I turned, I was still listening to the sounds that were coming from the kitchen. I could hear someone open the fridge and grab something. I was 100% certain that the person in the kitchen wasn't my mother. So who was it? I may have been petrified by the thought of a stranger roaming around in our house, but I wasn't about to cower in fear. I knew that I had to confront whoever it was and get them out of our house. I quietly crept toward the bathroom door, succeeding in my goal of remaining as inaudible as possible. I made it to the hallway and could see the subtle blue light glowing from the kitchen to the end of the hallway. I made my journey as quick as possible while remaining quiet. My strategy was to avoid stepping on the hard surfaces so my feet wouldn't stick to them. As I made it about 3/4 of the way through the hall, I could hear the refrigerator open again, only this time, it didn't close. I could also see the light from the refrigerator ignite the room in its blinding glow. I pressed forward with no intention of stopping. When I made it to the end of the hallway, all I had to do was to get a glimpse of the intruder, was to turn the corner. The only thing in my way from the corner was a slice of cheese. I stepped over the cheese and looked in the kitchen, but something was off. I couldn't see anyone. The refrigerator was still open, but no one was in sight. I was in a state of both relief and shock. That is, until I saw a hand reach for a bottle of ranch and cheese in the refrigerator. I watched this hand eagerly unwrap the slice of cheese as if it were desperate. It popped the cap off the ranch, which landed on the floor and immediately squirted nearly the entire bottle of ranch into this slice of cheese. The man then folded the slice of cheese and brought it towards his face. I presumed that he was taking a bite. I was relieved that he wasn't trying to harm anyone, but I had to do something about the intruder. My plan was to strike the intruder by surprise and then dispose of them later. I did so by slowly inching closer to them, desperately trying to keep my noise levels down. As I inched closer, however, something started to feel off, as if there was a supernatural element of some sort. If there is anything that I've learned from this experience, it is to always trust your gut, which I did not do. When I got within 3 feet of the intruder, an intense amount of anxiety shot through my nervous system. So much, in fact, I started breathing heavily, enough for them to hear me. When I noticed the intruder pause to listen to the environment, it made me even more anxious. My heart was beating faster than it had ever beaten at that point. To remedy the anxiety, I took deep, slow breaths. Once I calmed down, I grabbed a fleshlight that was sitting on the counter and hopped around the corner. With my intentions on attacking whoever it was that had broken into my home, when I finally got a glimpse of the intruder, my jaw dropped. This was no man. It was a seagull with the hands of a man, a curly beard going to the floor, and lips on the end of its beak. Whatever it was that was in front of me horrified me and shocked me to my core. I've never dealt with any kind of bird before, but I could tell that this man's seagull was pissed off. The seagull was still holding its ranch and cheese sandwich, but it wasn't moving at all. It was just staring at me with a blank expression. I could hear the ranch from the sandwich quietly drop onto the floor. The seagull and I must have sat there for 5 minutes, just staring at each other. The seagull made the first move. It ate the rest of the ranch and cheese sandwich, and then reached into the refrigerator for another slice of cheese and a second bottle of ranch. All I did was observe the seagull in its binging endeavors. Once the seagull was finished creating the second ranch and cheese sandwich, it took a bite, and then vanished into thin air. After this happened, it must have broken me because I started screaming. I started running around the house, but in my confused and worried state, I made a mistake unforgivable in my household. I stepped on a slice of cheese.